Today's MMA T Company Fighter Spotlight is with Alyssa Linduska. Alyssa is coming off of a big unanimous decision win at Fighting Alliance Championships 9. That was on July 30th. Alyssa, thanks for joining us today. How are you feeling now? It's about a week or so after that fight.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me here. I feel great. It was an amazing experience. I can't believe that it's been a week already. Time just goes by so quickly, and already thinking about the next steps. But yeah, in general, my body feels great. It was a great performance. No injuries. And yeah, just ready to get back at it and move forward.
And you said before we started recording that you're already back in the gym, you're already back training. Is that pretty standard for you after a fight? You don't really take a whole lot of time off?
Yeah, it is pretty standard. And I mean, I took I would say like about a week or so off. During the week I'll do some cardio just to make sure I don't get too out of shape. But yeah, and even that's an adjustment. Before I used to go back to the gym like the day after, but I've just realized in order to have longevity here,
Mhm.
I don't want to wear down my body too much. So I do take that time now, at least a few days to recover and just appreciate life. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's something that a lot of fighters have, that kind of mental struggle, if you want to call it, that they think a
Mhm.
week off, they're going to just completely fall out of shape. And recovery is one of those things that is kind of a learned skill almost, where you have to tell yourself to kind of step back and relax. And, it'll be there. You'll come back and your timing will still be there if you only take 4 or 5 days off.
Oh my goodness. So actually like 2 weeks before this fight, I had got really sick. I get pretty chronic like sinus infections. And so 2 weeks before, I was out of commission for a straight week. Like I was so sick, I couldn't do anything for a week, 2 weeks before a fight. And I think my younger self would have totally freaked out.
Mhm.
But my adult self or mature self was like, okay, just don't, make sure your diet is on track, make sure you sleep enough, make sure you go outside for walks, do that kind of stuff. And so after that, I was able to get back in the gym and I was pretty close to 100% and cut weight fine. So yeah, it's definitely that experience really helps you deal with whatever challenges. And if you want to do this long term, you can do it because you have that knowledge and experience.
And you talk about your adult self, or right, your like more mature self, or the person that's been fighting for a decent amount of time.
Mhm.
You started fighting in 2017. You lost your first fight, and then you've rattled off 7 straight wins since then. Um, did you have any kind of martial arts background? Were you in Taekwondo as a kid? Did you wrestle or anything like that?
No, so I started MMA because I graduated from college and I wanted to try something different and new. And then there was an MMA gym like right down the street. And I tell the story I think a lot, but when the guy called me to come in for my first session, he was just wanted to see where I was at. Like, why are you doing this? Do you have aspirations of fighting in a cage and all of that? And my first reaction, because I never done like Taekwondo, I'd never done wrestling, I never done any of those things. But my first reaction was, no, I never want to fight in a cage. What kind of question is that? But then I did it for like about a year and turned out I'm really competitive. And yeah, so then I just took it from there. And then one day I was like, yeah, I want to do this. And then here we are.
And you are 8 fights now into your amateur career. Like I said, you only lost that first one via decision, and then it's been in the win column ever since. So coming from not really having a background in any of these traditional martial arts or wrestling, anything like that, what did you gravitate towards first? I saw you had a couple decision wins and then a couple submissions as well.
Yeah, which is very interesting because I gravitate towards striking like, much more than I do grappling. But it just, I think when I reflect on like my career, it's just those were the openings that I had and
Mhm.
that's where the finish came from. Um but I do love to strike, and my last fight was a real striking match. And I loved it. And I mean, it was a real bummer that I wasn't able to get the finish, but that's just something that, will come with time. But in general, I mean, since I think the benefit of not coming from one discipline is that I'm just a true MMA fighter. That's there's pro and con to that, but I'm just MMA everywhere. I don't really care where it goes.
Sure, and that's kind of I don't want to say new way of looking at things, but a lot of
Kind of.
people had come into this sport in the past, right? And they have like that traditional wrestling background, or they were in
Yeah.
taekwondo or whatever that may be. But now, there's 6, 7, 8-year-old kids that are walking into gyms and they're training MMA from the start. So are you kind of seeing that revolution of these new athletes coming into even your gym that are starting out really young and, getting good very fast?
Oh my goodness. Yes. I do wish that like my younger self just joined MMA, but it's I think you see it, right, with the new generation of fighters that are coming in, and um they're just so well rounded. And I think being a good wrestler can take you very, very far. Being a good kickboxer can take you very far, but I think those that are coming up in MMA are just going to be so dangerous and so challenging for those like single discipline, veterans. Yeah.
Sure. And it's something where if you don't have that one thing that you always go back to and rely on, it can be kind of a blessing and a curse, right? Because some people who are
Yeah.
dominant wrestlers, right, they can use that and they can exploit other people's lack
Yeah.
of wrestling. But someone who came up, like yourself, with not really any serious training in one discipline, you can kind of see where someone may be weak and then, fall into line there as opposed to just trying
Hmm.
your, strength, if you want to call it that.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I think I mean, there's a lot of keys to MMA, but one of them is being able to be adaptable in a fight, and fluid. And I do believe that's a skill that I obviously still need to work on and develop it, but that's how I see every fight. I go into every fight like, I don't know what this girl is going to do, because there's been times where you think your opponent is going to do something and they do something 180, and it's like, okay, great. Now I have to adapt like this. And so MMA is beautiful in that way.
And I did want to talk about your most recent fight. Fighting Julie, who's a also very experienced opponent. I think she was the most experienced fighter that you had faced yet in the cage.
I think so.
And I saw something that you posted on Instagram that you were happy to get the win, but there were still some things you wanted to work on. So just talk me through your kind of your experience during that fight and what your takeaways were from that win.
Yeah, going into that fight, I mean, it was a great experience off the bat. I didn't even hesitate to take that fight because she had a lot of experience. She comes from a really well-known gym with great coaches. It's a well-known promotion. There's a lot of eyes on that promotion. And it would be my first time like flying and traveling like that and cutting weight. So there was really no loss. I mean, it was just all upside, right? If I did lose, then at least I had all of that experience. So that was my mindset going into the fight. And, fighting her, I thought that she was going to be really tough, really durable, and she was. Because when you fight somebody that has that kind of experience, they're not going to give up.
Yeah.
So, but I was kind of surprised with um kind of like how, I don't, no disrespect to her, but kind of how easy it was to just land the game plan that we trained, for. So, she was tough, but I was able to do everything that I had trained 2 months for. So, uh, and yeah, and then afterwards, I really wanted the finish, and those are the things that I'm going to work on for the next fight is being able to recognize when I can get that finish on the feet, right? Recognize when your opponent is hurt, when they're backing up, and then how to set it up, right? What was landing, and then how to fake and maybe go to something else and get that finish. So those are just details that we'll work on for the next one.
Sure. And that's it's one of those things that is not something you can always replicate in the gym, right? You can always replicate
Right.
finishing the arm bar or, the rear
Yes.
naked choke, whatever that is, but you're not really starching your training partners and then trying to finish them on the ground. So to
No.
notice that it's almost only something you can do in the cage.
Oh, 100%. And And my coach is really, he's really great and says that, going all rounds in amateur just gives you that much more experience for when you go pro, because there are things that you can only experience in competition, and that's one of them. So as much as I'm a bit sour about not getting finishes in all of my fights, I do have a lot of cage time.
Yeah, and the
Yeah.
cage time, I think, anybody will attest to that being probably the most important thing when you're coming up through as an amateur, right? You might have 6 fights, but if they only each last a minute, somebody who's got 3 fights and they all last 3 minutes, right? Or three-minute rounds, whatever
Hmm.
that may be, that person's cage time is just, they have a wealth of knowledge from being in there.
Yeah, definitely. And so, you know, um, I do have better, I mean, I'm a better fighter now than I was a week ago,
Sure.
so now going into, my next fight, I'll be able to take what I learned. And every time I get in there, it's so much more clear. I can hear my coaches, I can see what she's doing, and be able to react. And I have like those conscious thoughts of like, do this, do that. Whereas, when you're first starting up, it's like, duh, just do whatever you can.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's funny you say that. Did you, when you had your first couple of fights, I don't remember mine, and it's not because I got rocked or anything. I think it's just
Oh,
because the
no.
adrenaline was so high that you come out of the cage and you're like, what just happened?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, my first one, yes, which I lost,
Mhm.
because it was like, "What is this? This is crazy." And so, but then the next one, um, I mean, it was still nervous, right? Like I couldn't feel my hands, I couldn't feel my legs, like just everything was so tingly. And the second one, I won by armbar, but I remember when I was finishing the armbar, I like couldn't feel my arms. I knew from muscle memory where to put everything, but I couldn't like feel my hands. And then when it was over, I was like, oh, phew. And then every fight since then is just more. I don't want to feel that way, so I think I really embrace the process. I really replay the scenarios over in my head leading up to the fight. So by the time it's time to fight, I've kind of exhausted the nerves. Not to say I'm immune to it, because I definitely wake up and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna fight today. But for the most part, I try to exhaust that before I step in the cage.
Yeah, and it's something that I think also slows down, right? I talked to Chance Beck a little bit when I interviewed him, and he said after
Hmm.
his long layoff, he came back, and he doesn't know if it was him just more mature as a human being, or he wasn't as nervous, or whatever it may be. But do you feel like the things in the cage now are also slowing down? Like you said in the fight this past time, you were able to kind of execute your game plan, and you were consciously able to think what you were supposed to do.
Yeah, I do think it also depends on your opponent.
Hmm.
For me, I'm a real pressure fighter. So like even if it's slow, I'm creating the pressure and I'm creating that fast pace, but I'm able to see and adjust. So I don't think that it's like slowing down. I think I'm just more I'm just I don't know. I have more experience being in that kind of pressure cooker, so I'm able to adapt better. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, you're kind of more, I don't want to say tuned in because you always want to be tuned in a fight, but you're
Hmm.
conscious in the cage as opposed to just
Yes.
be going through the motions or muscle
Yes.
memory.
Exactly. Exactly.
Sure.
Yeah.
Um, and you talked about body feels great, right? Fight was, went well, some things you could improve upon. Do you have anything lined up for the future? Do you have any thoughts about what your next step's going to be in your career?
Yeah. So the next step is to go pro. So I'll be making my pro debut. I want to do it by the end of the year, but I never rush fights, or, I don't like to feel pressured to compete. So my goal is to do it by the end of the year. And yeah, make that pro debut and then start climbing those ranks. So
Awesome.
yeah.
Sweet. We're looking forward to it. I appreciate your time today. You know, before I let you go, just wanted to give you a chance to shout out the people that have been helping you along the way. I know it's been, a couple years that you've been fighting, so I'm sure your support system is pretty large. But anybody you want to
Yeah.
shout out, feel free.
I mean, yeah, definitely my gym at Intercept. I mean, they've been there from day one when it was, different name and all of that. So there's endless support there and great teammates. And my coaches, Danny and Pierre. Pierre's also my boyfriend, so he provides the the coach aspect, but also the emotional and mental support. And I just definitely couldn't do this without him. And then everyone at VFS, I cross trained there, for this camp, and that was pretty new. And they definitely pushed me. And then you guys for getting my t-shirts and everything. Like I had never had t-shirts before, so it was so awesome to just have that and not worry about the stress of what comes with creating t-shirts. And then of course, finally, Mitrospect, who supplies me with all like the supplements and kratom that I need to get through a camp. So yeah, but yeah, I appreciate the time, John, and thank you for having me.
Awesome. Thank you. We're looking forward to that pro debut.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
All right. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye. Cool. So I'll cut that up. I'll get it posted like tomorrow or the next day. I'll tag you and
Cool.
do all that stuff.
Awesome. Well,
Sweet.
thank you, John. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Appreciate your time. Thanks a lot.
Okay, bye.
See ya.